The room was silent, but it wasn't peace. It was pressure, the kind that builds before a storm. You could hear papers shuffle, a throat clear, the faint hum of cameras. And then, his voice. Confident, sharp, almost theatrical. "Your Honor, if we're done wasting time, perhaps we can begin." The corporate lawyer smirked as he adjusted his tie, every gesture polished, every word chosen to command the room. He didn't look nervous, he looked amused. And there she was, Judge Judy, seated in her chair, hands folded, gaze steady. She didn't blink. She didn't move. She just watched him, like a hawk watching something it's already decided to devour. Friends, you know that feeling when someone walks into a room convinced they're the smartest person alive? When their arrogance fills the air before they even speak? That's what happened here. The man standing before Judge Judy wasn't just any lawyer. He was a corporate shark, the kind who billed $500 an hour just to breathe. He had the confidence of someone who thought television courtrooms were for entertainment, not justice. And yet, he was about to learn that this wasn't entertainment. It was education. You could feel the tension ripple across the audience. The producer, sitting off camera, whispered to a cameraman, "Keep it rolling. This is going to be good." Judge Judy finally spoke, calm, composed. "Mr. Halpern, you'll have your turn. Right now, I'm asking the plaintiff to speak." But he interrupted again. "With all due respect, Your Honor, perhaps the plaintiff should have hired a real attorney to make her case." A few gasps broke out in the crowd. The plaintiff, a single mother, lowered her eyes. She'd been through this before. Men like him used confidence as a weapon. Judge Judy leaned back, silent. No gavel, no shouting, just that quiet stare, the one that says, "You have no idea what you just started." And then she raised her eyebrows, just slightly, but everyone in the room felt it, the shift. Because in her courtroom, that expression meant something. It wasn't surprise. It was a warning. Viewers watching at home would later describe that moment as the calm before history. The second Arrogance met its teacher. And you, watching now, you'll see exactly what happens when ego walks into the wrong courtroom and mistakes silence for weakness. Because Judge Judy, she was just getting started. His name was Richard Halpern, a name that carried weight in Manhattan's glass towers, partner at a corporate firm so powerful that even judges hesitated to challenge their clients. The kind of man who wore confidence like armor and used charm like a blade. To his colleagues, he was a strategist. To his rivals, a storm in a suit. But behind all that polish, there was one defining trait. He hated being told no. Halpern built his empire by intimidation. He was the kind of attorney who didn't just argue cases, he crushed them. Secretaries cried in his office. Opposing counsel dreaded seeing his name on filings. To him, the courtroom wasn't a temple of truth. It was a stage, and winning, not justice, was the applause he lived for. But power has a way of blinding the people who hold it. Somewhere along the way, Halpern stopped seeing opponents as people. He saw them as obstacles, and obstacles were meant to be removed. So when his wealthy client, a luxury property developer, was sued by a single mother for wrongful eviction and damages, Halpern didn't see a woman fighting for fairness. He saw an opportunity to perform. Originally, this case wasn't supposed to see the light of day. It was routine, destined to vanish into the quiet paperwork of civil court. But one of Judge Judy's producers stumbled upon it while scanning through small claims filings. The setup was irresistible. A powerful corporate lawyer versus a struggling single mother in a battle that mirrored a nation's moral imbalance. The producer made a call. The show offered to mediate the dispute on air, compensating both parties for their time. The plaintiff agreed immediately. She believed exposure might protect her from further retaliation. Halpern's client hesitated, but Halpern didn't. In fact, he pushed for it. Why? Because he saw cameras as mirrors, and he loved his reflection. He told colleagues over lunch, "It'll be fun. I'll educate that TV judge on what real law looks like." Laughter followed. Someone joked, "Don't make her cry on camera." Halpern smirked, "Only if she deserves it." It wasn't about justice. It wasn't even about the client anymore. This was about legacy, about proving that even under the bright lights of daytime television, he could bend anyone to his will. But in chasing fame, he chose the wrong arena. Judge Judy's courtroom wasn't designed for theatrics. It was designed for truth, raw, unpolished, and often unforgiving. And the irony? The very thing Halpern craved, control, was the first thing she'd take from him. The morning of the taping, he arrived early as if he owned the place. Black suit, perfect cufflinks, he shook hands with the crew, dropped names, and even gave the bailiff unsolicited legal trivia. Cameras rolled quietly in the background as he rehearsed his smirk in the reflection of the polished courtroom table. He looked at the plaintiff, nervous, holding a folder too large for her trembling hands, and whispered to his assistant, "This won't take long." But arrogance makes people underestimate silence. Because sitting across from him, behind that bench, was a woman who'd spent decades dismantling men who thought law was a game. And while Halpern was busy preparing his performance, Judge Judy was preparing his lesson. He didn't know it yet, but the moment he stepped into that courtroom, his career clock started ticking. The cameras were ready. The audience was ready. And somewhere behind that calm expression, so was she.
He reached into his briefcase, a sleek, expensive thing, and began to shuffle papers with exaggerated confidence. The sound of crisp pages filled the courtroom. A few seconds passed, then a few more. Silence. The shuffle grew frantic. Judy waited, still, silent, watching. Finally, Halpern looked up, trying to mask uncertainty behind a polite smile. "It seems my assistant may have placed it in the secondary folder." Judy raised one eyebrow. "Your assistant?" "Yes, Your Honor," he replied, forcing a laugh. "I have a team that manages." "Mr. Halpern," she cut in, her tone like ice. "You made a very public claim. A serious one. You said this woman committed fraud. You said you had evidence. And now you're telling me your assistant misplaced it?" A faint ripple of laughter ran through the audience. Nervous, restrained, but audible. Halpern straightened his jacket. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I don't appreciate being mocked." "I don't mock, Mr. Halpern," she said sharply. "I dissect. And right now, I'm dissecting your credibility." The air in the room grew heavier. Even the cameraman leaned in slightly, sensing that something important was unfolding. "Let's make it simple," Judge Judy continued. "Show me any document that supports your accusation." Halpern hesitated, eyes darting across his papers. His hands trembled, just slightly, but enough for the camera to catch. "Well, Your Honor, as I said, the evidence is being compiled." She leaned forward. "Then why are you standing here making claims you can't support?" He tried to speak, but she didn't give him room. "Don't look at me like your secretary, Mr. Halpern. You made the claim. Now prove it." The audience gasped. Even the bailiff's eyes widened for a split second before regaining composure. Halpern swallowed. His voice lost its edge. I'm merely asserting that the plaintiff's story contains inconsistencies." "Which you cannot prove," Judy said firmly. "And in law, when you can't prove, you don't accuse. That's how adults operate. Are you an adult, Mr. Halpern?" The courtroom erupted in quiet laughter, but Judy didn't smile. She wasn't joking. Halpern's jaw tightened. "This is highly irregular, Your Honor. What's irregular is a lawyer who walks into my courtroom with arrogance and empty hands." Her voice was calm, but each syllable struck like a gavel. Halpern's composure cracked. He looked down, flipping through meaningless papers just to avoid her stare. Judge Judy leaned back, watching him like a teacher watching a student realize the exam isn't multiple choice. The silence stretched, thick, unrelenting. And for the first time, Richard Halpern wasn't winning, he was unraveling. By now, everyone could feel it, the shift in energy. The power that once seemed to orbit around Richard Halpern was dissolving, inch by inch, replaced by something heavier, sharper: accountability. Judge Judy had gone from silent observer to surgeon. Every sentence from Halpern's mouth became another opportunity for her to expose the disease of his arrogance. "Mr. Halpern," she began softly, "you use very interesting language. You say my client was forced to act. Forced by whom?" Halpern adjusted his cuffs. "By circumstance, Your Honor, Ms. Torres failed to—" "Stop. You're doing it again," she interrupted. "You twist language to make the victim sound guilty and the guilty sound righteous. That might work in your corporate towers, but it doesn't work here." The audience murmured in approval. Cameras zoomed in. This was the moment when authority shifted hands. Halpern straightened his jacket, pretending composure. "Your Honor, I'm simply describing facts as presented." "Facts don't require decoration," Judy snapped. "They stand on their own. Lies need performance." That line hit like thunder. Angela Torres, who had been sitting quietly, head bowed, hands folded, suddenly looked up. Her lips parted, trembling, but her eyes had changed now. There was something steady now, something brave. "Your Honor," she said softly, "I didn't want to be here. I just wanted what's fair. He's been talking to me like I'm nothing, like I don't matter. But I paid my rent. I followed every rule. He made up fees I couldn't afford and then threw me out. I lost everything." Her voice cracked. She tried to stop herself from crying but couldn't. Judge Judy didn't interrupt. She leaned back slightly, giving Angela space to speak, not as a plaintiff, but as a human being reclaiming her dignity. The audience fell completely silent. Even the crew, seasoned by years of courtroom drama, felt the sincerity cut through the air like glass. Halpern's jaw tightened. He shifted, impatient. His fingers drummed the table. When Angela wiped her tears and looked at him, he smirked, a small, smug curl of the lip, as if pitying her. That was the mistake. Judge Judy's hand came down on the bench. Not a slam, a declaration. "Wipe that grin off your face." The words sliced through the silence. Halpern froze, realizing too late that his whisper had become a confession of disrespect. He tried to cover it. "Your Honor, I didn't mean—" She stood. The room seemed to tilt with her movement. Even the cameras adjusted, instinctively capturing the full force of what was about to happen. "You didn't mean what, Mr. Halpern? You didn't mean to insult this court? Or you didn't mean to get caught doing it?" The audience murmured. The sound of quiet gasps filled the air. Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice low but burning. "I've dealt with your kind my entire career. Men who think power is volume, who think that if they talk over truth long enough, truth will get tired. But let me tell you something, truth doesn't tire, it waits." Halpern swallowed hard, color creeping back to his face. "Your Honor, I was only—" "Do you think shouting makes you right, counselor? You don't intimidate truth, you expose your weakness." Every word hit like a hammer. The crowd was silent, drawn in by the weight of it. She stepped closer to the edge of the bench, her voice low but burning. "You've used arrogance as armor your whole life, haven't you? But arrogance doesn't protect, it isolates. And today, Mr. Halpern, it left you defenseless." Halpern's lips quivered. I apologize, Your Honor." "Too late," she replied coldly. "Apologies only matter when they're not televised." He blinked rapidly, fighting to hold himself together. But it was useless. The mask had shattered. The cameras caught everything, the trembling hands, the broken voice, the realization that the empire he had built on fear had collapsed in front of millions. Judge Judy sat back down slowly, the storm retreating, her tone once again calm. "Now," she said softly, "shall we finish what you started?" Halpern couldn't answer, because at that moment, everyone in the courtroom knew his career was already over.